Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Hope Rotifer, and I am the Director for Educational Initiatives here at Carnegie Mellon, Qatar. Today we have an amazing panel to talk about grand challenges in AI, where we'll be hearing from some very prominent thought leaders in the field of artificial intelligence. I would like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Professor Ganesh Mani, who's an adjunct faculty at the School for Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. He's also teaching a course on artificial intelligence and grand challenges for both the Qatar and Rwanda campuses. So I'll pass this off to Professor Mani.
Thank you, Hope, and CMU Qatar for this great opportunity to continue the AI Grand Challenges conversation that my mentor, Turing Award winner Raj Reddy here on the main campus started 30 plus years ago as the president of the American Association for AI, which is what AAAI was then. It now stands more inclusively for the Association for the Advancement of AI, and it's fitting that we have Francesca, the current president-elect, on this global panel. 30 years ago, I was a grad student in Wisconsin. You know, a lot of cows in the state, bovine engineering expertise at the universities, and people outside the university, when I told them I'm working on AI, they'd say, I know what it means. It's artificial insemination, right? Today, a barber or bartender knows what AI is. They ask nuanced questions, worried about their jobs. And I tell them the new AI is actually augmented intelligence. It can help provide precise, personalized services while they can focus on showing empathy with their customers. This is true of many other jobs as well. Doctors, nurses. You may ask, why are grand challenges important? They can act as a North Star, guiding practitioners and young researchers. A good mantra is, of the people, by the people, with machines, for the people. Of course, embodied in these challenges are policy and socio-technical issues. AI's fire is a metaphor that often comes to mind. Many folks on this panel have written about different AI challenges: information assurance, digital care, personalized e-mentoring, and ethics, which you can read about them in AI Magazine and other journals. Today, I thought we'll highlight a few of them, discuss some nuances. In terms of the flow, I'm going to ask the panelists to make short introductory remarks. We'll go over a few questions, themes that I think are important, and then involve you, the audience, in the conversation. I know we have folks from at least 4 different continents, I believe, tuning in, and we have youth representation on the panel as well. These conversations shouldn't be boomer, blah, 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 right? Please post any short questions in the chat after the intro commentary by the panelists, roughly 2 minutes each. We're going to go west to east. So let me hand the virtual microphone to Dag, who I'm assuming has already conquered the early AM Grande Caffeine Challenge.
Thank you, Professor Mani. That's lovely. My name is Dag Spicer. I'm the Senior Curator at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, the heart of Silicon Valley. And just wanted to thank you for inviting me today to discuss perspectives in artificial intelligence, or augmented intelligence, as Ganesh suggested we might begin to think about it. Since much of our discussion is oriented towards the future, I wanted to follow this path, that is, look at the future, but take a slightly different approach just in the 2 minutes I have, and look at the past, since the Computer History Museum's middle name is history. So let's look at the past as a way of thinking about what's maybe coming down the road. And so let's just start quickly looking at the museum. Its collection has over 100,000 items in it now. It's home to the world's largest collection of computer artifacts, photographs, movies, software, and ephemera. And the world-class collection that we have exists to support essentially our stories about technology. Museums and other cultural institutions are, to a large extent, storytellers. And so the stories that we tell range the gamut from graduate level history monographs to middle school to visually stunning exhibits for the general public. And I invite everyone watching us today to visit us in person or at computerhistory.org. So some of our favorite objects in the collection are actually related to AI. The legendary Shaky robot, for example, from SRI in nearby Menlo Park, is on permanent display in its own display as the lead object in our AI and robotics gallery. So Shaky's history is very interesting. It was a mobile robot a project actually that lasted multiple years from about 66 to 72, with cameras and touch sensors controlled by a large-scale computer. And it capitalized on progress in computer vision, language processing, and planning at the time to understand instructions such as push the block off the platform. And for example, if you put a block in front of Shaky, it could plan a route around the block on its own and move around the block, guide itself around the block as well. So that was a very big milestone and in essence, kind of a grand challenge of its own. And it was really the first AI project that melded logical reasoning and physical action together. And although it wasn't a practical tool in itself, it led to advances in AI techniques, including visual analysis, route finding, and object manipulation that we still use today. So the A-star algorithm, which is a special case of Dijkstra's algorithm, is basically the foundation of Google Maps. And we could tell similar stories about other robots in the museum's collection, like the Stanford Cart, for example, a moon rover project begun in the 1960s to explore remote control of robots and local autonomy. And in fact, along with the Stanford Cart, I have to mention the CMU rover because it was it essentially was a better version of the Stanford Cart, more perfected. And the reason that people were pursuing this was because solving the control and perception problems of an autonomous mobile mechanism was one of the best ways of arriving at general artificial intelligence. That is what was believed at the time. So Shaky and vaguely human robots like him are the public face of AI in many cases. But in today's universe, objects exist within an ecosystem unimaginable in Shaky's day, a world with nearly twice as many people living on Earth, an ecosystem with multiple serious coextensive planetary scale problems like pollution of our land, air, and oceans, global warming, global health disparities, and the rise of intolerance and anti-democratic entities. And so I ask, can AI rescue humanity from its apparent collision course with the world it has made? Einstein warned about solving technological problems with yet more technology, pointing out that it's really human consciousness that needs to change. And one thing is sure, without collective effort, humankind cannot save itself, and history does not provide a lot of optimism on this score. So how can AI help us to work and think together is really the great question and the great opportunity for this technology. So throughout this seminar, this meeting, I look forward to hearing everyone's thought about how AI can sort of foster this collective vision of problem solving, because to me, we have to act collectively as a species in order to solve these problems. It's not enough just to throw technology at the problem. So let me just finish by introducing Mercy Asiedu, who is our next speaker. And I'm very proud to say that she is the winner of the 2021 Computer History Museum Pat McGovern Tech for Humanity Changemaker Prize. A lovely prize intended to foster a global community committed to technology for good. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. So over to you, Mercy.
Hi everyone. Thank you again, Doug, for that wonderful introduction, and thanks to the CMU Qatar for having me. As you know, my name is Messi Sierra. I am currently a postdoctoral research fellow at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where I study AI applications to medical imaging, specifically ultrasound. My contributions to AI fall under three main categories. So my interest in AI fall under three main categories, which all focus on AI with global health applications and bridging health inequities. So usually, typically, technology has increased the gaps in healthcare, especially between high-income and low-income countries. And even in high-income countries, and even within high-income countries, technology in healthcare tends to increase gaps between people who can afford health and people who can't, which in the United States where I live, goes along socioeconomic lines and unfortunately also along racial lines. So the first thing I'm working on is actually using AI for improving ultrasound imaging in low-cost portable ultrasound devices. And this has applications in remote areas in the US and in high-income countries where there might not be availability of expensive ultrasound machines, but also has applications in developing countries like where I'm from, in Ghana, where technology has typically not been developed with the constraints and very specific limitations of developing countries in mind. So that's the first item. And the second item I am working on, and which is one of the things I won from the McGovern Award, was to develop an AI-based tool for cervical cancer screening. So I've developed a low-cost portable screening device during my PhD as part of work from Color Health Foundation. And the reason why we developed this was because usually devices for screening cervical cancer are not available in resource-limited settings in developing countries. So we've developed a tool that can be carried around for community health. And we wanted to bridge the gap in lack of access to specialist care. And that's where AI came into play. So if we could use AI to generate automated risk assessments, then we would reduce the need for experts and we could offshore this, or we could put this in the hands of community health workers. And the third item that I'm working on is specifically to bring Africa into the AI game in terms of health. So as we know, data is really the crux of what you need when it comes to developing AI models. And a lot of health data in Ghana, where I'm from, and in a lot of African countries is on paper. It's very difficult to access that for the AI models. And if your data isn't represented, you get left behind in the AI gold rush. So I'm working on using mobile technologies, which are pretty ubiquitous in African countries, to enable patients with chronic health conditions to store their data on their phones and then provide them with AI-generated recommendations to improve their health and help them reach specialists, but also use that data to help inform chronic disease trends and manifestations that are specific to the region. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for Africa to get on this AI gold rush, and we shouldn't let data hold us behind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mercy. I was going to say low-cost innovation is very important in the emerging economies, and I think AI has a role to play. I know you're wearing the MIT hat, but we recognize and tolerate excellence. Jokes aside, we look forward to working with you in the future. Yeah, I was going to suggest we keep the intro remarks to 2-3 minutes each, and then we can get into the interactive mode. I know Francesca wears multiple hats, global ethics leader, IBM corporate, as well as AAAI president. Take it away, Francesca.
Thank you, Ganesh, and thanks for the opportunity to speak at this panel. I work at IBM Research, and at IBM, so I lead the research projects around, advancing AI capabilities. This is what I've been doing for many, many years, even before joining IBM as a professor of AI at the University of Padua in Italy. And also, I played the role of being the AI ethics global leader for the whole company. So leading together with many other people, of course, the overall structure and governance, internal governance that we put in place at IBM to define and implement policies, internal policies, and also together with our ecosystem around addressing AI ethics issues such as fairness, explainability, transparency, robustness, and so on. As you know, IBM is not new to grand challenges. You may remember that IBM has been leading a challenge about chess playing with machines, the Deep Blue program that in 1997 beat the world champion Garry Kasparov, as well as the Watson challenge at Jeopardy that tackled issues of natural language interpretation and probabilistic reasoning and many others. So we are used to thinking in terms of grand challenges. And also in our research environment, we really think about, kind of more in the future than in the other business units, of course, like in a company that has a research division. In particular, in my research projects, while let's say for many decades, I just worked within AI to try to advance some specific AI capabilities with technical tools. Now I moved into a more multidisciplinary environment where we try to leverage what we know of human minds and brains in order to understand whether this information, how to use this information to advance AI capabilities. In particular, my research project is about leveraging the thinking fast and slow theory by Daniel Kahnekamp to tell us how human beings make decisions and exploit these two different modalities. And we try to use it to advance AI capabilities, especially in those capabilities where humans are still better than machines, like generalizability, adaptability to new environments, learning with a few examples, and so on. And all of this, of course, is not to just advance AI per se, but to make AI more useful, more supporting better human decisions. And hopefully to get, to mention what Doug was saying previously, a better collective intelligence for human beings. That's the ultimate goal, not to advance technology, but to use advanced technology to advance our own understanding, our own society. And the second topic that I want to talk about is related to AI ethics and the challenge of really operationalizing within each institution, whether it's a company, a country, or any other organization, the principles that have been defined. There have been defined so many principles. People have been talking about AI ethics issues, but now is the time really to operationalize them, whether it's with internal policies or standards or laws, many other ways. And this is a challenge. This is a challenging thing because AI ethics is not only requires multidisciplinarity, but also requires multiple stakeholders. So it's not a technical problem, it's a socio-technical problem that needs to be solved with socio-technical solutions. So that's the additional challenge in doing that. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Good thoughts, Francesca. I think, Beverly, you're up. We had a tiebreaker on the East Coast, so we're going alphabetically by last name. I know you have written a lot about ed tech, including grand challenges in education, paper in AI magazine that's highly cited. I encourage the audience to look at that. But the pandemic has actually brought ed tech much more into focus. So we look forward to your commentary, Beverly. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. So I've been working on intelligent tutoring systems and building systems for thousands of students to use. And I think there's a huge role for artificial intelligence in education, mainly because we can now have learning everywhere, every time, every topic. I know during the pandemic, it wasn't clear that these systems were very effective, but I think we were caught short-handed. We will get better at this. Specifically AI, some of the challenges are to have AI provide a place of study that diminishes boundaries. That is, you don't have to study now in the school and then go home and not study. You study at home, you can study in the workplace, you can study in colleges. And education level is not going to have boundaries, like kids in high school now can take college courses just going online. And the type of learning, it's not going to be formal or informal. It can be a branch between all of them. And we will mitigate or eliminate artificial and non-productive educational boundaries that have been in our way for years. And classrooms are also boring. I mean, if you know, 45 minutes for math and 45 minutes for history, well, that's ridiculous. Why don't you study as long as you want, when you want? So right now, digital learning is constant, is instantaneous, is at the speed of light, is connected with others, is powerful, is full of multimedia. And also the other challenge for AI in education is personalized learning. Adaptive systems will now bring problems and comments, responses to the student who needs them and not to the student who doesn't need them. And you will go further, or you will be also brought to have intermediate and lower level teaching if that is what you need. And now the systems are also learning. In other words, when they have thousands of students, a particular, say, online mathematics system will have thousands of students, well, then it is learning from all those thousands of students which problems are the best to give to each kind of student and what is most effective for each student. And also we have to talk about multi-human machine teams. In other words, when will the teacher take over? When will the student take over? When will a peer take over? And how will this collaboration be monitored and interleaved and transferred? How do we transfer control? And another huge issue in education is ethics, which Mercy has already talked about. And that in that case, we're really worried about bias in the databases. So if a database was constructed without any minority students, without underrepresented students, how can it then give advice in terms of what next course to take or what place to be at for all students? So we have to have all of our databases more diverse. We have to change our algorithms. And the last topic I want to mention is about human cognition. These systems now are at the point where not only can they personalize the material for people, but they can remind students of things that they are likely to forget, or they can help them make better decisions. And they can help them have focus of attention when a student might lose their focus of attention. So the possibilities are great. And what we have to do now is recognize where the need is, develop these systems, and then make sure that ethically we are not causing trouble for students.
Yeah, thank you, Beverly. You talked about EdTech AI helping with time and space shifting. That's exactly what FIRE allowed folks to do. They were able to move north, come out of caves, do some activities after dusk and so on. So it's sort of very interesting looking at the juxtaposition. I think ethics is interwoven in all activities. And I forgot to mention that Francesca talked about chess. So the chess team actually started here well before my time. And then IBM helped with the last checkmate bit, I guess. Let's move on to Patrick, who has done a lot of work now in Africa around agtech, fintech, et cetera. He's logging in from exotic Mozambique. Take it away, Patrick.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and able to talk about perspectives in AI. My background here started really with moving to Rwanda back in 2014. And I come from a very multidisciplinary background in that I have my first degree from Trinity College Dublin was in theoretical physics. So I moved from that to a maths PhD at Oxford University, and then to engineering, and then even to more hopefully impactful applications at CMU Africa. So I've moved all the way from the very theoretical through to what can we actually do that has an impact, not just writing good papers in great journals, but actually seeing some real impact on the ground. And I guess a lot of my work has been primarily on trying to improve the accuracy of predictive models. So the three areas that I've spent a lot of time working on is, first of all, understanding how the financial services thinks about risk and reward, because every decision is made on that basis. Then secondly, predicting human behavior. So some of the applications there are in the lending area, credit scoring, understanding dropouts, understanding group dynamics. And these are obviously very similar topics that you might have in education when you're looking at students that are running through different courses. And the third theme for me that's growing with interest and seeing more and more exciting adventures in this space is AI for social good. So working with the UN on sustainable development goals, how they're measured, how they're monitored, how we use that to make some progress. Fair taxation, so using satellite imagery to understand land value, agricultural technology, COVID monitoring. So a range of different topics where the data is available and there's a real need on the ground because of lack of resources in many cases. But I think a lot of these topics are not just applications in developing countries, but they're also applications in developed countries as well. And just kind of looping back to CMU Africa, like some of the real exciting developments there is we've just rolled out a new MSc in engineering AI. So we've already got a large cohort of students that are looking at that interaction between engineering and AI and just trying to understand how the two come together. We've also got a World Bank funded African Center of Excellence in Data Science, also situated at the University of Rwanda in Kigali. And just sort of two final thoughts, and I know we'll come back to a lot of this in the later discussion, but it's that I feel that as a quantitative person, I've moved from most of my endeavors being to improve the accuracy of these models, trying to understand if you go from a linear model to a nonlinear model with very complicated machine learning, that you get more accurate predictions. And of course, that the ability to predict is very fundamental to AI. But we're now also seeing from the ethics point of view that the dangers are not just about the models going wrong, they're also the dangers of us not being aware of how limited the models might be. And that limitation may often come from the data, it may come from a whole range of different places. And some of the biases are biases that we are aware of as humans, and we just keep feeding them back into the models. The models are never going to be clever enough to sort of strip out those biases. And we're seeing that cyber terrorism, AI warfare, there's a potential path of destruction that lies in front of us. And hopefully we can avoid ending up in a Terminator movie. But I think we do all need to be very aware of where we're going with all of this. So I'll loop back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. No, you brought up UN and SDGs. Actually, we have a guest speaker in one of my classes later this semester, but they've written a Nature paper last year, Ricardo Vinuesa and a few others, 2020 AI and UN SDGs. I think that's a good discussion for people to take a look at. And I think, Gianni, last but not the least, you've done a lot of very interesting work with swarms. You want to tell us a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Ganesh. Thanks, everyone. Hello. So I'm Johny Decaro. I'm an associate teaching professor at the CNU campus in Qatar. As Ganesh pointed out, actually, my teaching and research interests are in the fields of AI and robotics. Let's say, in particular, I'm interested in the study of multi-agent swarm systems. They can feature robots, devices, humans. I did projects for like multiple robots, humans, and dogs, and robots for search and rescue. So there are scenarios where we have multiple, maybe a lot, thousands in principle, of interacting agents, entities, and we want to let them cooperate, teaming up, in order to create effective synergies. The basic idea is very simple indeed, that as a collective, if we can work on well the things, we can always do much better job than a single individual. Well, of course, we have to make it happen, and then we have to work out interaction, coordination, joint decision-making, mutual understanding, and mutual awareness. And my research has been exploring all these different aspects. And today I want to point out that indeed, the study of collective intelligence systems is probably one of the most challenging aspects that AI research will have to tackle in the forthcoming future. In a sense, the idea is soon we will have some AI attached to any device, system, car, robot, you name it, that will be around us in our daily lives. And so we'll need to continually interact and team up with these systems. We'll have to shape the systems to our need. We'll have to change it, to monitor it, to tune it somehow. We'll have to learn all these kind of things. But we are somehow humans. We are good at certain things. We have certain peculiarities, properties. I'm Italian. I like gesturing. I have to modulate my tone of voice. I'm very emotional. I don't expect somehow maybe a humanoid robot that will be around me in my house will have the same characteristics. We have to actually work out how to seamlessly, smoothly merge these two worlds and create, again, synergies. Augment each other. Ganesh used this word in its initial remarks. We're going to create an augmented system where each one brings its own properties. And we might want to do this on large scale, for large scale things. Just give like a hint, we can discuss about this later. We soon might have, because okay, it's still like, there are some, let's say, doubts about this, but let's say some might are like full of self-driving cars around. Millions of them. This is actually a swarm of robots, AI robots, where we will be inside the car, will be people outside the cars will interact with each other, and possibly we'll have to make them, being like nice against the environment, traffic, and so on. How do we work these things out, all these interaction parts, us with the cars among themselves, the system to optimize the use of road resources. And by the way, this is very challenging, but think that actually collecting, let's say, examples for training systems, like in a machine learning approach, say, yeah, okay, I just get data, and then I work this out. Well, think about a very simple thing. If I use like a classic supervised learning, so I'm very plain here, but it can be very difficult for multi-agent systems. It's very, very difficult indeed. Also, if I use reinforcement learning, yeah, actually now we're doing most of these things in simulation because it's too dangerous actually to do things with physical agents in the real world. This has effects, impact. So this is to say that we are building appropriate tools for collecting artificial intelligence happening effectively in the real world, and we'll have to tackle many challenges. But definitely, there is a lot to do, and this is in OpenAI Grand Challenges documents. This point is really like very underlined. The aspect of collective intelligence is one major challenge, and I'll be happy to discuss some fabulous things today with you.
Thank you, Gianni. Good comments. I think ambient AI is only increasing, but one of the problems is also somebody brought up misinformation. I have a teenager at home. TikTok is now 1 billion cohorts strong, right? So some of these youngsters are being influenced, nudged more by algorithms than by humans in their own household. So I think misinformation with the vaccines, the science was pretty incontrovertible. Even then we had some trust issues in the US, in parts of the US. We had access issues in other parts of the world. So how do you folks think about misinformation? Maybe I'll go to Francesca first, because one, IBM has a global presence. IBM has done a lot of work with NLP and all that over decades. So how do you folks internally think about misinformation and what's the solution?
I mean, I would go more generally about this notion of trust that you mentioned, so that which is also central in AI ethics. So how do you build systems and deploy them in a way that they can be trusted? I mean, of course, in a justified kind of trust from the people using them, so the operators using them, but also from the people who are going to be subjected to the decisions made by humans plus machines together. So how do you build that trust? And this is one direction. So how do you build trust in the technology? And the other direction, how do you use the technology to support trust between people, between governments, between institutions and the public? So that is also another direction that is very important, and that refers to the fact that yes, you can make AI more fair. You can try to mitigate the bias, but as was said, you cannot eliminate it. So you really have to be transparent about the bias that is there, and so that people realize the real capabilities and limitation of the technology, that beats a big aspect of bias. You can make the technology more explainable to explain why it makes a certain decision, a certain recommendation from the input data, and that also another big ingredient that supports the building of trust in the technology. Transparency, making sure that developer teams say and record and collect all the information that went into this development, so that if there is some bias or if there are some limitations, then they are clear to whoever is going to use these AI systems. And that also is very important for building trust. But again, the technology itself can be built, but more and more, I think, together with human beings. Really, what we say always at IBM, and we always implement in our system, that we think the technology should augment human intelligence, should not replace it. And so there should be decision support systems that, as others have said, should help human beings make better decisions in judging information, misinformation. I'm trying to understand which one is misinformation, which one is real facts. So helping human beings in making. So we have technology that helps, for example, hiring managers, make sure that they choose short lists that are as diverse as possible. So to help them overcome even our cognitive biases, of our shortcomings in our inferences, in our decision processes that we don't even realize. And there are also some limitations, of our way of reasoning and our brain functions. So technology can really play a big role there. But together with as was said, the fact that humans and machines are complementary, and we should exploit this complementarity. So, in fact, when people talk about, like was mentioned, self-driving cars, to me, the assistive driving technology, which is already in many cars right now, is the augmented kind of intelligence for drivers that is essential for saving lives already now, even without having really full self-driving cars. So that's the kind of augmented collective intelligence that I think can be very useful.
No, makes sense. And I think if folks have more questions, please put it in. Beverly, I was going to come to you anyway. Patrick made the point that we provide the information, the data to the machines, and then the machine does some processing, and we shouldn't be surprised that they are biased. But let me ask you this question, Beverly, if you want to weave that in. In math, things like 4 + 3, it's black and white. The answer is 7, right? But if you go to some geographies, for instance, Taiwan, is Taiwan a country, right? It's a very nuanced answer. Likewise, there are Northern India, parts of the Middle East, here, if you talk about historical perspectives on slavery and all that. So how do you think about sort of K-12 education for some of these non-black and white topics?
Yeah, that's a good question. But also I want to respond to the previous question about misinformation. We could say that education, in fact, is responsible for some of this misinformation. The view of science as not being as strong as some other values, the view that some people, can get on Twitter and propagate their answers and make it stronger than the systems that we teach. In fact, we're not providing accurate, balanced information to the public, and we're not raising. I think this is international, that there's a problem with education, and the part that it's boring and that people resist it also is part of that. But then you were talking about the information that's not black and white. So that's the issue right now. The AI systems came from a rule-based expert systems, and in those days there was a right and a wrong, and there was a decision tree, and you go to the left or you go to the right. And that wasn't good enough. And it's not good enough for what we are doing today and the kind of problems we have. The problems we have of global warming and of hunger and of plague, let's say, are international and require people to collaborate, just as you were saying, and to cooperate and to have information come from multi-sources. Well, the one way to do that is with AI, because we can have collaborative systems and we can bring in information and then with our algorithms, try to amalgamate the information. Now, our algorithms at this point are still biased, and our databases are biased. So we have to adjust all of these as we progress. But I think what we need to do is recognize that we put AI into the world, we as humans, and it's our responsibility to now look at it and make sure that it is capable and is not restrictive and is not leading to non-diverse groupings and understanding. So I think AI has some culpability here, and it has tremendous capability. And we as responsible researchers have to address that.
Ganesh,
Mercy, do you want to chime in, or Doug, and then if Mercy wants to, so Doug, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to make a really brief comment, which is that following up on what Beverly said, H.G. Wells said, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. Nice. And I think actually that is the problem with, there's a lack of internet / social media literacy, the ability to analyze sources. And, when people speak about AI, using AI to counter misinformation, I think, we can't use AI to save us from ourselves. We have to develop our own cognitive skills when it comes to knowing right from wrong and truth from fiction. Anyway, that's my comment.
Mercy, I thought you may have a perspective, having grown up in two different continents, and then also you're the youngster on the panel. So do you have any comments?
Just a small comment on who is developing the AI and what responsibilities they have. So I don't think a company is going to necessarily, make its algorithms ethical if they are not being, if a government or an external body is not making sure they're ethical, because their job is to make profits. So take, for instance, there's ways to limit biases, or there's ways to limit misinformation, but it's not in the interest of some of the bigger companies, and it's in their interest to send you down the rabbit hole and make you more and more misinformed. So kind of like back in the days when tobacco companies knew tobacco caused cancer, and they had the research and just didn't want people to know, and they had to take the governments to step in and say, and regulate it. I think we are going towards a spot where AI needs to be regulated by external bodies.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that AI regulation, in an area such as facial recognition, has already started. Certain towns, cities in the United States will not allow the police to use facial recognition, and certain companies have decided not to use it. It is a thing. It's just like medicine, for instance. In every country, there's a governing body that decides whether a medicine should be used in your country or not, and it's through tests, and some countries have larger, longer, extreme tests. But we really need tests like that for AI. We can't just push these things into the world without any stipulations, without any regulations. And even in my field of education, there are no laws, there are no formulas, there are no statutes, there's no framework for how to develop a system to teach a course. And there's no framework for what the reaction the student should have. And there should be some guidance. I'm not talking about heavy restriction, but facial recognition has gotten itself into a lot of trouble in the last 5 years. And the only way we can get out is to have stipulations and rules about how it is used.
Yeah, Francesca, you were going to chime in. I also make the distinction between sort of atoms, bits, cells, right? So cells and atoms roughly can be contained in geographical boundaries. The borderless bits we have a problem with. And I think even with the vaccine mandates, right? Different countries are saying different things about who can come into the country. In some places, the AstraZeneca vaccine is not recognized and so on. So Francesca, how do you think about sort of this global regulation push? Can we get there? How are you thinking about it?
Yes. Let me first respond to the statement that companies cannot deliver ethical AI unless they are regulated. I mean, in my company, this is not what happens. We do many things that are not required by regulation just because we think it's the best thing to do. We, develop, policies and toolkits available to everybody, open source, around fairness, around explainability, around transparency. So all these things are not because of regulation. Of course, there are many forces around the company. Regulation can be one of them. Client expectations can be another one. The media scrutiny can be another one. The values of the companies itself, even before AI was in the picture. So there are many forces, internal and external, that can contribute to the company really deciding to do things beyond compliance to the law. But I can assure you that there are many things that are done. One example, the facial recognition, as you may know, IBM and other companies, but IBM decided to not deliver general purpose facial recognition technology. Whenever we deliver that technology, we want to be very sure of the use cases. We cannot deliver and then whoever has the technology decides the use case. So and many other companies have similar things. Regulation, however, is in place and is coming. In various states. In the US, is a bit scattered. States and cities here and there. But in Europe, for example, you may know that in April of this year, there have been they published, the European Commission published a proposal for a regulation on AI systems, which means that the regulation is not about AI technology per se, but about uses, applications of the AI technology with a specific intended purpose. And it has 4 levels of risks. The unacceptable risk level is for things that will be banned. There will not be in Europe, no matter where you are in your company. You may be a global company, you may be a company in Europe or somewhere else. If you deliver something to Europe, it has to comply to that regulation. Then there are the high risk applications, and that again are very significant kind of applications that require a lot of obligations for providers and also for users. So globally, I think that, for example, that regulation proposal that will probably take in effect, it will take a few years to be in effect, but will be a game changer also in other regions of the world, will be an example of how a country, in this case, the whole European Union, will implement AI ethics guidelines that were developed in 2018, 2020, and now they are being embedded into a regulation. So I think that globally, especially global companies like IBM, they are already implementing parts of that will be in the regulation in advance of that, but that is something that with the governments, collaboration of the governments and the global companies will spread all over the world. So for example, at IBM, we don't have policies for Europe, policies for US, policies for some other place. Our policy around bias, transparency is the same, no matter where the technology is going to be delivered. So there is a really global role to play that from company that is not related to compliance, but goes beyond that and is the decision of the company.
Yeah, no, thank you, Francesca. I know there are a lot of questions and we have about 10 more minutes, but one of the respondents is talking about the trade-off between sort of innovation and over-regulation. But I know Gianni raised his hand. Gianni, you may want to comment on some things that have already been discussed, but also I want you to also address this sort of the future, which is going to be a multi-machine, multi-human team, right? So not a uniform swarm. So how do you think about things? And after Gianni, I have a theme for Patrick to address, but Gianni first, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Just a brief comment that goes along the line of what I've been said. One thing that AI has to work out well is actually to explain the decisions, because we can only build trust in systems when the system can explain how the decision has been made. So otherwise it's going to be a black box. Why should I trust your system? Maybe it was a big bias. I don't know. Yeah, you've been saying this, respecting the regulations. Am I sure? But if you can explain me, then it's a totally different story. So actually, self-explanatory AI is something that will be a major building block to build trust, and also a way to actually how to make normative systems can be also moral systems. I mean, in the sense like normative systems inside the training of the AI system, because then we can actually have something that can explain itself and can align with the norm of a country. Then this is also, I mean, two parallel directions that definitely should be followed and will make a major improvement in building trust. Going to your question about human AI multi-agent teams. Actually, this ability to explain will be also a major part of the story. In a sense, one of the main difficulties will be precisely to create a self-awareness when I interact with like AI systems. How do they understand what I want to really achieve? What are my deep intentions? And how do I understand what are they state? What are their goals? So somehow we're allowed to develop means to have these abilities, a way to, again, to explain decisions, to make states' intentions transparent. Of course, we have to work out a number of other things. Like the example I was saying, maybe probably mentioned before, if I've been working like search and rescue systems, if I have like multiple robots around me, and while doing my job, I'm using my hands and using my speech and using my gaze. So all these things actually, so this multimodal interaction we use must be captured and understood by an AI system. We can do very good subset of these things, but the entire system, we capture the entire multimodal communication with all the, let's say, modulation that we use in our human-to-human interaction are still far away. So I think we have to, this is going to be a very important part of the story to have something, let's say, in the vision of the future, where we really have like capable robots around us that can help for doing things for industry, manufacturing, but for healthcare, for instance, to take care of people, for caregiving, be very important. So for me, this part is very essential to care about the interaction and also the mutual awareness, because only in this way we can really like create a bond and then create a system that can scale up from the little units to like larger units.
Yeah, sounds good. I want to come back to that multi-sense, multi-modal theme, but I had a question for Patrick around risk management. You've done a lot of work with the financial domain. You know, can this sort of collective intelligence reduce risk? How do you think about risk management and AI, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm just coming back to that question about the private sector being able to look after itself. I think, was it just this week we heard about a report on Instagram about how damaging Instagram was potentially on young children, a report that was buried for 2 years. I'm not quite sure we really can have faith in large companies that benefit from just making so much money, ignoring some of the risks. So I think we can come back to that one again. Risk management, yeah, it's, it often starts off with we don't even know what the risks are. So how can we possibly ever manage some of the risks? And quite frankly, I think we have no idea. This is the first time ever a group of, cohort of teenagers have been run through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is. We don't know how they're going to come out at the end of it. And maybe we'll be looking back and this is going to be as horrible as tobacco was, a generation ago. I really like the idea of what the European Commission is doing in terms of regulating not the technology, but focusing on the use cases. And I think that's probably where we do have some very very clear ideas. So thinking about the future of work and the potential for a class of people that just can't compete with the automation. There's going to be jobs that are going to be lost, and I think it's going to be a paradigm shift. AI brings wonderful things, but can we re-educate? Can we completely change a workforce to react to that in the same time frame? So I think, yeah, the risks are there. We need to get those conversations going and try and figure out how we move ahead with that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. There's misinformation and some of the things. Yeah, Facebook was compared to big tobacco by some senators here and so on. That's a much harder issue. But I do want to come back to this multimodal, multi-sense thing, especially in light of today's medicine Nobel Prize announcement, right? That's around touch and sensing heat, cold, taste. So AI has done a lot of things with vision and speech, right? So two sort of dominant senses, if you will. Are there these other senses, including some things that mechanical sensors could do? Will that take us towards less biased systems? And I think Francesca wanted to address at some point this sort of AGI, right? This general intelligence and potentially common sense and so on. So how do you folks think about this sort of multimodal, multi-sense thing? And that also gets to this big data. You get more data, you get more diverse data, so you can make better decisions. Who wants to take it first?
Well, I can say that, yes, definitely. I agree that multimodality and multimodal data is very important to advance AI capabilities as well. After all, this is what humans rely on, very different kinds of data that allow us to build models of the world that then we use to make our decisions. So AI for now, as you I think alluded to, is a form of narrow AI. It can take some data, specific problem, and solve with some properties that specific problem, but it doesn't have the broad capability of learning from one problem and then using what is learned on one problem to accelerate the learning of solving another problem, something that is so typical of human beings. So that's why in my project, I really focus on understanding what are the causes of these capabilities in human beings and whether they similar causes or analogous causes, but on a different platform, because of course a machine is very different from a human being, can be embedded in an AI system. So I usually don't focus too much on AGI, artificial general, because I don't even know exactly what that is, but definitely there is a way to make AI's capabilities broader and to make it more generalizable and adaptable to new environments.
Yeah, I've gotten that time signal, and I know AI cannot help with a time machine or pushing 65 minutes into 60. So I think wonderful questions. I think a lot of the folks are available on social media and by email. So I'd say this is just continuing the conversation. We're not settling anything. Today, I want to go to closing comments by our esteemed panelists. We're going to go in the same order. So just take 30 seconds, start your sentences with a do or a don't, some advice to the youngsters, what they should be working on, what they should be thinking about. Dag, you get to go first.
Oh my, well, I guess one of the things is try to read broadly in history and literature and look to the past as a guide to the present and the future, because it really does serve as a good guide in many, many instances. It's not a perfect guide, but because so much of our lives is this ecosystem we're talking about, that is the human element, not the technology element, those values are eternal. Human values are eternal. The way human beings act and respond haven't really changed in millennia. So try to study and incorporate as many human values as you can into your work. That would be my advice.
No, touche. I think as Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme or something like that. So you're next up, Mercy, for your closing wisdom.
So mine is do follow what you are passionate about and find a way to use that to help the world and help improve lives. And there's always going to be some trend or some technology coming up that might make previous skills not relevant, but the goal shouldn't be the technology or the trend, but should be how it impacts lives and using whatever is available to do what you're passionate about.
Francesca, I think you're up next, and maybe one of the do's you want to mention is more global members for AAAI, because I think big consumers are in emerging economies.
Well, I want to reiterate on do follow your passion, for the new generation. Follow your passion, because that's when you will have fun. First of all, you will improve yourself, you will understand better yourself, and you will be successful, because if you're not passionate about something, it's very difficult to be successful at it. But also do remember that technology is there to allow for social progress, and not for, building some technological progress, which is disjoint from social and societal progress. So remember that technology is there to help us improve ourselves, our society, and build the future that we want. And in terms of, research, specifically AI research, I would say, look at the past, as Doug said, the fact that AI has so many different techniques. Machine learning is not the only way to solve problems. It is a better way, maybe for some problems, but there are many other techniques that you should not forget. And in particular now, I think is the time to combine them, to integrate them, to take the best of all these various techniques. And this is what the AAAI community is about, an integrated form of AI where machine learning and rule-based or logic or symbolic-based techniques are combined to take the best of all of them to augment AI. And yes, definitely AAAI now is a very international community. We have many people from the US, but also many people from Asia and from other countries. But definitely we would love to have more members from every region of the world, because our, again, view is let's get together all the competencies and all the expertise in core foundational research for AI that is thinking about big problems of the future and advancing the technology with the thought, remember that the technology is in support of social progress.
Very good, big, bold, blue thoughts. Beverly, you're up next.
So I just want to mention that we can't put the genie back in the bottle. AI is here, it is expanding, it's progressing along many directions, and it is bound to continue. And we have to admit that and not say, how to regulate it, how to stop it. It's not going to be stopped. So the important part, I think, for the future is to let it unfold, but not without our input, not without us saying what the restrictions are, what are the impact, how the impact will continue. How will the next generation live in a world with AI in so many components? What is the best way to train young people about AI to get into the field, but also to live with objects and items that are on the internet and are all connected? And what do we do about AI in public-facing applications like health and like education? We need to shift the discussion to be at the social level, just as Francesca says, for the extreme position to take account of the social values, human cognition capacities, and actual AI capabilities. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Makes sense. I think we're back to the hosts. Gianni, closing comment, and then I think Hope can finish up. Thank you.
I think Patrick is before me.
Oh, sorry, Patrick. Yeah,
sorry.
This is when
I was going to say. Yeah. I was going to say, I'm going to start with the do not first. I would say do not relax about AI risks, whether it's automation and the promise of why am I not working a 3-day week or, 4-day week at worst. There's something going on here that we need to figure out. I think we need to think about universal credit. There's a whole lot of schemes that are going to have to deal with those that are going to struggle to not become AI engineers. And on the more positive is to encourage everybody to organize or at least participate in competitions that can really look at small case pilots, testing out blue sky ideas, and hopefully more of those focused on some of the big global challenges that we've mentioned here today. Thank you.
Okay, now it's my turn, I guess. I want to just, my message is like an educator to all the young scholars. Don't act like a frog. Don't be eager to jump to the product, to the conclusions, but actually enjoy and go through all the individual steps, understand the math, understand the theory, understand the concepts, because actually, from my point of view, many problems, the bias and the issues are related to the fact that many practitioners do not really understand the concepts, but they are able to deliver the product. So please, the young generations, learn, study the mathematics, it's tough, do it, get the concept, and then you're gonna deliver better products. And definitely also back up what Francesca was saying, as a roboticist nowadays, you can't just use machine learning or something. You must integrate model-based, data-driven, many techniques together. Things are there, learn it, use it, and just take the best of all the words, but consolidate your knowledge all the time.
Thank you, Gianni. Great panel, and round of applause for all the panelists and the audience. And Hope, any closing comment?
I would just say thank you again to our esteemed panelists and to you, Ganesh, and to our participants who wrote questions in the Q&A. If we did not get to your question, we will do our best to have those answered via email, and we'll be in touch with you.
Thank you.
Have fun, work on hard problems, and have fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.